In the summer of 1998, 7-year-old Hannah Keller vanished from her family's living room while cartoons played on the TV. No broken window, no sign of a struggle. Her favorite teddy bear was gone too. Everyone believed she'd carried it with her when she disappeared. 16 years later, her brother helped clear out their old neighbor's bedroom after he died, and under the man's bed he found Hannah's teddy bear. Hidden inside, he found something no one was ever meant to discover, a secret so twisted it forced police to reopen a case buried for 16 years. The bear was the last thing Ethan Keller ever expected to see again. It was late March when they boxed up Dale Whitmore's house. The old man's heart had given out in his sleep. No family left except his brother Alan, who hadn't bothered to show for the funeral or the keys. Ethan took the job because it paid. $50 to help the landlord drag Dale's musty furniture to the curb, stack boxes for Goodwill, sweep up the smell of stale cigarettes and cat piss that had soaked into the rug since the late 80s. 3 houses down from his mum's place. Same block, same cracked sidewalk, he'd scraped his knees on 1,000 times when Hannah was still there. Dale's bedroom was the last thing to go. It felt wrong poking through a dead man's dresser, the neat rows of flannel shirts, his spare hearing aid batteries, the thick prescription bottles that didn't save him in the end. Ethan pulled drawers, flipped the mattress, kicked aside slippers that smelled of mothballs and old sweat. Then he saw it. The shoebox pushed deep under the bed frame, just far enough you'd have to crawl on your belly to yank it out. He dragged it into the stale yellow light seeping through the blinds, sat cross-legged on the worn carpet, peeled the rubber band off, brittle, snapped to powder in his hands, old receipts, random letters, a few Polaroids, and at the bottom a matted lump of grey fur. He lifted it out, his breath caught in his throat. A cheap teddy bear, the one Hannah clung to every night, every nap on the couch, every time she was scared of thunder. Its fur was patchy, one ear flopped sideways where the seam had popped, and on the right paw a faded swirl of pink thread. Hannah, his mother, had stitched her name there herself the night Dale gave it to her for her 7th birthday, said it would keep her from losing it at school or the park. Ethan turned it over in his hands, thumb brushing the frayed ear, the clumped fur stiff with dust. The memory hit him sharp. Hannah sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, the bear tucked under her chin while she watched Saturday morning cartoons. Her giggle when Dale handed her the gift all wrapped in cheap party paper, Mum fussing with the cake on the kitchen table. Alan standing beside Dale grinning like a proud uncle. He squeezed the bear's belly. Something shifted inside, not soft, a dull, hard click. He frowned, squeezed again, definitely something buried deep. Ethan tore at the back seam with his thumb, felt old thread give, dug in with his car keys until the hole widened. A tiny lump dropped into his palm, a micro cassette recorder, dinged up. The cheap kind with duct tape on one side scuffs across the plastic window. He turned it over, fingers numb. 16 years. A part of him wanted to drop it right there, shove it back in the box, push the box under the bed, and forget he ever saw it. But then he pictured Hannah, her tiny fingers brushing the bear's stitched name. The way she'd tug it close when she fell asleep on the couch, and he'd sneak the remote from her limp hand. She'd been 7, he'd been 9. He'd promised Mom he'd watch her while she did the bills. He'd turned his head for cartoons and cold cereal. The door creaked open behind him. When he looked back, the couch was empty. The bear was gone. So was Hannah. No struggle, no footprints, just the screen door drifting open in the summer air. He flipped the recorder in his palm, half expecting it to spark or hiss, dead, obviously. He looked back at the bear, limp hollow now, and felt his stomach twist. Why would Dale old man harmless smile kindly neighbor with his stories about fixing fences for free, keep this buried under his bed? Why keep Hannah's bear Ethan stood up too fast? The shoebox spilled across the carpet, Polaroids fanning out. He caught glimpses of Dale grinning beside a battered pickup. A faded shot of Dale's backyard grill-outs. Another, with Alan leaning against the porch railing, cigarette dangling from his lip. He stuffed the bear under his arm, shoved the recorder into his coat pocket. His heart thudded in his ears. That old sour taste of panic he thought he'd buried years ago. Outside, the landlord's voice drifted in from the living room, asking if he was done, if he'd stack the boxes by the curb. Ethan didn't answer. He stepped over the spilled photos, his boot pressing one down. Alan's crooked grin staring up from under his heel. He pulled the door shut behind him, bear pressed tight to his chest. He didn't know what the hell was on that tape. Didn't know why Dale kept it hidden all these years. Didn't know if he even wanted to hear it. But he knew one thing for sure. Whatever that bear carried inside it was Hannah's. And this time, he wouldn't look away. Ethan Keller didn't drive home right away. He parked 2 blocks over engine off bear in his lap, like it might whisper to him if he stared long enough. He couldn't bring it inside yet. Couldn't risk Mom seeing it. Not like this. She'd been so good at pretending, at piling years of pain behind pharmacy bags and polite half smiles. 16 years of Hannah's gone. Ethan, let it be, please. And now he sat in the dark with the damn bear that should have vanished with her heavy in his hands, like it knew what it had done to his family. The micro cassette rattled in his coat pocket. He pulled it out under the dome light. Just a cheap thing, battered, grime in the creases. He popped the battery hatch with his thumbnail. Dead, of course. Ethan rummaged under the seats for spare batteries, found old napkins, gas receipts, an ancient pack of gum. No luck. He slammed the glove box shut hard enough to make the bear flop off the seat. He caught it by the paw before it hit the floor. Pink thread. Hannah, clear as day. He drove to the only place open at midnight, the gas station on the corner, the one he used to steal candy from with Hannah before they were old enough to know better. The clerk barely looked at him when he dropped a pack of AAS on the counter. Ethan didn't say a word, just shoved cash across the sticky plastic and ducked back out. In the cab of the truck, he cracked the pack open with his teeth. Hands shaking, he shoved the batteries in backward the first time, hissed a curse, flipped them right, snapped the lid shut. He drew a breath that didn't want to come. Click. A faint hiss, then silence. He adjusted the tiny wheel with his thumb, then a voice. Small, soft, grainy, still clear enough to punch him right in the gut. My name is Hannah Keller. I'm 7 years old. If you find my bear, please tell Mommy I was good. Please tell her I didn't cry when he told me to be quiet. Ethan squeezed the wheel so tight his knuckles burned white. He pressed the recorder closer to his ear. Static, a shuffle fabric, brushing the mic. Then another voice. Male, lower, close to the mic, but muffled, half-whispered, half-threat. Quiet now, little one. You know what happens if you don't? No more, Mommy? A tiny gasp, then silence. The tape clicked off. Ethan sat there a long time, the bear in his lap, the recorder dead in his hand again, like it had used its last breath just to gut him. No more, Mommy. Who the hell talks to a kid like that? He rewound it with a shaky finger, played it again and again. Quiet now, little one. No more, Mommy. Not Dale's voice. Too rough. Dale was soft-spoken, syrupy sweet. This was Hardamina clipped and tired of pretending. Uncle Alan says we're going on a trip soon. He could hear her tiny voice now in his head, overlapping the tape. A memory that wasn't really a memory, just dread, painted as fact. Alan Dale's brother, the one with the oily smile, the handshake that lingered too long when he congratulated Ethan, for being the man of the house when Dad split. Ethan slammed the recorder on the passenger seat so hard the batteries popped out again. He didn't care. Let it break. The bear stared at him, glassy-eyed head slumped sideways. A birthday gift from Dale, a secret toy, a trick, Alan's voice on the tape. A kid's fear soaked into old stuffing. He turned the ignition. The engine rumbled under his boots. Headlights painted the empty lot in cold yellow. He grabbed his phone. His thumb hovered over Mom. He pictured her face when she opened the door. Her bathrobe, the soft slip of her voice when she still used to say Hannah's name like it might break her teeth. He couldn't. Not yet. Not until he knew for sure. So he drove instead, not home. Not to Alan's old house 2 towns over. Not yet. He needed to see her room. His old room, too. He pulled into his mother's driveway at nearly 2:00 in the morning. The porch light flickered once, then went out like it knew he was coming. Inside the house was quiet, but awake. The hum of the fridge, the low static hiss of the old TV left on for company. He towed off his boots, crept down the hall. His old room was half storage now. Boxes, old coats, a pile of Hannah's old dolls in a plastic tub she'd never let go of. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed that hadn't been his in a decade. He laid the bear across his knees, brushed the faded pink stitches. "I'm going to find you, kiddo," he whispered. "And if he's still breathing, I'm going to make him choke on what he did." Ethan barely slept. He lay on his back, staring at the ceiling, the bear propped in the crook of his arm, like he was 7 again. Not 25 with a bad shoulder and worse memories. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard it. "Quiet now, little one. No more mommy." Alan's voice tucked under Hannah's whisper like a rot under fresh paint. He replayed the tape in his head until it stuck. Every click, every breath, every soft thud of Hannah's voice brushing fabric. By the time dawn pushed through the blinds, he'd decided. He wasn't asking, he wasn't waiting, he was going to Alan's. He found his mother in the kitchen, hair up in a lazy twist robe, hanging loose on one shoulder. She was stirring powdered creamer into stale coffee, humming a tune she probably didn't know was a lullaby. Hannah used to sing to that bear. She jumped a little when she saw him standing there. The bear tucked under his arm. Her eyes dropped to it, flicked away too fast. "Where did you get that?" she asked, voice flat. Ethan didn't answer. He opened the fridge, pulled out the milk sniffed sour, tossed it straight into the trash. Mum flinched at the sound. She clutched her mug like it was the last warm thing she had. "You shouldn't have brought that back here," she said. "You know I can't." "It's not good for us, Ethan." He set the bear on the counter between them. He flipped the bear over thumb, brushing the thread his mother stitched all those years ago. It was in Dale's house, Ethan said, calm, like he was telling her about a weather report. In a box under his bed. She stared at it, swallowed. Her throat worked like she might spit up old words she hadn't said in 16 years. "That doesn't mean anything," she said. Voice brittle. "Dale was good to us. He helped. Look, he gave it to her ma for her birthday." Ethan's tone cracked then, but he forced it back down. "You remember you stitched her name on it yourself?" Her eyes watered then, but she didn't blink. Didn't reach for the bear. "I don't want to hear it, Ethan. We've done this. You've done this before. Digging in old boxes, talking to old neighbors, asking questions that don't go anywhere. This goes somewhere," he snapped. He pulled the recorder from his pocket, dropped it next to the bear, so hard it rattled on the formica. Her eyes widened, just for a second. "What is that?" He hit play. Static, then Hannah's voice, tiny, grainy, alive. "If you find my bear, please tell Mommy I was good." Then the whisper. "Quiet now, little one. Alan's threat bleeding through. His mother's hand flew to her mouth. She turned away, pressed her palm flat to the fridge like she needed it to hold her up. "You're wrong," she said, muffled, almost begging. It's a child's voice. It could be. You don't know. It's her ma. Ethan's voice dropped low. It's her. And it's Alan's voice behind her. She shook her head. He's family. He was like family. Yeah, like family. Ethan grabbed the recorder, stuffed it back in his pocket. I'm going to him. You won't, she said. She turned eyes glassy. You'll leave it. You'll break your own heart again. You'll come home and drink yourself stupid like last time. He barked out a laugh so bitter it cracked the stale kitchen air. I'm not that kid anymore. He grabbed the bear from the counter. When he turned for the door, she grabbed his wrist, bony cold fingers that used to wipe tears from Hannah's face. Ethan, please. If he knows where she is, if her voice broke completely, then if she's gone, Ethan said, steady. I want to bury her, right, not in Alan's basement. He peeled her hand off him gently. She didn't stop him when he walked out. Alan Whitmore's place was 20 minutes out on old county roads past the faded town line, down where the fields turned to patchy woods. A squat ranch house roof, sagging old camper, rusting out front like a tombstone for better days. Ethan parked 2 houses down, engine off. He watched the place through the dirty windshield, bare-sitting shotgun like a second pair of eyes. No lights, no movement. If Alan was here, he'd know soon enough. He got out, boots crunching gravel, heart knocking in his ribs so loud he half wondered if Alan could hear it through the siding. He stepped up to the front porch, paint-peeling old wind chimes rattling dry in the breeze. Knocked once, twice. No answer. He tried the knob. Locked. Figures. He circled the side, caught a whiff of stale cigarettes drifting through the half-open garage door. Inside he heard it, a muffled cough, a scrape of chair legs. Alan was home. Ethan palmed the bear tighter, pushed the door open slow, old hinges screaming like they were tattling on him. Alan sat at a folding table by the workbench, sleeves rolled grease under his nails, a cold beer sweating in front of him. His eyes flicked up pale sharp, and for half a second no surprise. Like he'd known Ethan was coming all along. Well, if it ain't the Keller boy, Alan rasped. He lifted the bottle in a mock toast. You look just like your old man, mean eyes, same chip on your shoulder. Ethan didn't sit, didn't smile. He held the bear out, dangling it by the paw like a dead thing. Why was this in Dale's house? Alan's eyes twitched just once small. Then his grin widened, all rotten teeth and fake warmth. Now that's a story, Alan said, voice smooth as oil. Why don't you come in, boy? Shut that door. You and me, we got a lot to talk about. Alan Whitmore's grin stayed wide, but his eyes stayed cold. He leaned back in the folding chair, one boot braced on the table leg, the bottle sweating in his palm. Ethan didn't move from the garage door. He held the bear by its side now, not dangling the thread, brushing his knuckles, the cheap furs damp where his grip dug in. You want to tell me what the hell you think you're doing? Ethan said, voice flat. Alan's grin cracked just a hair. You got a real nasty tone, boy. Your mother teach you to run your mouth at men old enough to bury you? He drained the bottle, set it down soft, careful like he was weighing the next word. Dale was a good man, Alan said. Good neighbor. That bear was nothing, just a kid's toy that got mixed in with old junk. Ethan stepped inside, shoulders, square boots, scraping the oil-stained concrete. She was my sister. She slept with that thing every damn night until the day she vanished. Alan snorted a low, ugly laugh. You got a real short memory for details, huh? Maybe that little brat wandered off like they said. Maybe she left the bear behind. Maybe Dale kept it because your mama didn't want to see it rotting on the sidewalk. Ethan slammed the recorder down on the table so hard Alan's beer bottle rattled. "Then what the Vanishes torn is this, huh? You want to tell me why your voice is on there? Why you're whispering to my sister to keep quiet?" Alan's eyes flicked to the recorder, a twitch at the corner of his mouth gone in a blink. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, hands folded like a priest about to hear confession. "You got no idea what you're poking at, boy," he said, voice dropping low. "Sometimes kids lie. Sometimes they make up stories. Sometimes they put chi where it don't belong. You think you know my voice after all these years? You think you can prove a damn thing?" Ethan's chest burned. He could taste the acid in his throat. "I don't have to prove it to you," he spat. "I'll prove it to the cops." Alan laughed. Full belly sharp bark that bounced off the cinder block walls. "Oh, the cops. You think they'll listen after 16 years of your mama crying to every badge in this county? You think they'll waste a file on a dead man's old box of junk and some busted toy?" He stood, slow, palms flat on the table, eyes locked on Ethan. "You got no case, no body, no proof of. All you got is that bear and a sad little tape from a sad little girl who probably wandered off and froze in a ditch while you were busy watching cartoons." Ethan's jaw tightened so hard his teeth clicked. He pictured Hannah's face blurred now. The photo on the missing flyer that sat in a drawer back home under a stack of bills his mother never paid. He pictured her fingers brushing cheap fur, whispering secrets to stuffing she thought might protect her when nobody else did. "Where is she?" Ethan said. "No bark now." Low, even dangerous. Alan didn't flinch, didn't blink.
"You think I know if I did? You think I'd tell you after the stunt Dale pulled? Christ, you think he told me everything? Your sister was long gone by the time I came around to clean up his mess." Ethan's stomach turned. The way Alan said, "clean up," made his skin crawl. "You piece of shit," Ethan said, his knuckles whitened around the bear's limp arm. Alan's smile slid sideways, an ugly crack where his teeth glowed yellow in the half-light. "Go ahead, boy," Alan said. He stepped around the table, slow wide. "Hit me. Show me you're your daddy's son. Break my jaw. See if it brings your little sister back." They stood close enough Ethan could smell stale smoke and cheap beer. For a heartbeat, Ethan wanted to swing. He wanted to smash his fist into Alan's teeth, feel the bone give watch, the grin split open for good. But Hannah's whisper was still there. "Please tell Mommy I was good." Ethan forced himself back a step. He slipped the recorder into his pocket. One slow, deliberate move.
Alan watched it vanish, his eyes narrowed just enough to show he'd wanted that tape in his hand or smashed under his boot. "You can stand here puffing your chest all you want," Alan said. He jabbed a finger at Ethan's chest close enough to graze fabric. "But if you go to the cops, you're going to embarrass your poor mama all over again. You're going to make her cry on TV. You're going to dig up that grave she built in her head just so she could sleep at night. You want that?" Ethan didn't answer. He brushed past Alan, shoulder slamming the man's collarbone just hard enough to hear a grunt. Halfway to the door, Alan's voice slithered after him. "You keep knocking like this, boy. You're going to find out there's worse things than a lost little girl. Walk away while you still can." Ethan stopped in the doorway, back turned. He squeezed the bear under his arm, the stitched paw rough under his thumb. "You should have burned it, Alan," he said, voice cold. "You should have burned it all." He stepped out into the pale daylight. In the garage, Alan didn't follow, but Ethan could feel his eyes burning into his back like a curse. He didn't know where he'd go next. He only knew he wasn't stopping. Ethan barely made it 2 mi down the road before he had to pull over. The old truck rumbled on the shoulder while he sat there, forehead pressed to the wheel, the bear wedged between the dash and his ribs, like it might keep him from shaking apart. Alan's voice crawled around in his skull like roaches. You got no case, no body, no proof of. He'd seen it in Alan's eyes, though, that flicker of panic, when Ethan said, "Cops." A mask slipping just wide enough to glimpse the filth underneath. He wasn't wrong about one thing. Ethan couldn't walk into the station with a dead man's bear and a cheap tape. They'd smile, nod, maybe call his mother, tell her to keep him busy, keep him quiet. So he needed more, something real, something they couldn't brush off. He lifted the bear off the dash, turned it over in his hands. His thumb traced the rough stitching. Her name still clinging to the cheap fur after all these years. He flipped the recorder open again. Hannah's tiny voice crackled out, "Quiet now, little one. No more mommy." Behind that whisper, a faint bump like something hit wood. He rewound, played it again. There, that bump, then a faint hum. Not from Hannah, not Alan's threat either. He cranked the volume, static hiss. Underneath it, a click, a squeak, a door hinge. It was there and gone too fast. He cursed under his breath, snapped the recorder shut. Back on the road, he chewed the inside of his cheek, raw, trying to fit pieces that didn't want to sit still. Dale and Alan, the bear, the voice. If Hannah was in Dale's house, why Alan's voice? Why would Alan help? Why keep the bear all these years? His mind kept circling the same drain until it hit something solid. A memory from when he was 10, 2 months after Hannah vanished. His mother on the phone in the kitchen whispering to a detective while Ethan sat at the table pretending not to listen. The Whites have that old shed by the back fence. Right? That's what the neighbor's boy said. He saw lights back there. The cops had checked. At least that's what they said. Nothing there, Mom, just old tools and paint cans. But Ethan remembered Alan always around that shed, pulling tarps off old bikes, stacking boxes into Dale's rusty pickup. He used to flick him candy bars, wink at him like they shared a secret. Ethan's hands clenched the wheel until his knuckles cracked. He turned the truck around so hard, gravel spit behind the tires. The shed was long gone, torn down when the landlord bought Dale's place last year. But maybe some piece of it stayed buried in the dirt behind that rotted fence line. If Alan had stashed her there once, maybe he'd stashed something else. The sun was low when he pulled up behind Dale's empty house again. The landlord's truck was gone. Nobody watching this time. He cut across the yard, boots sinking into damp leaves and half-frozen mud. The back fence still sagged under the weight of dead vines. The spot where the shed used to squat was just a patch of flattened earth. Old concrete blocks half buried in the ground like rotten teeth. He knelt, palms on cold dirt, closed his eyes. Hannah's voice again in his head. "Please, tell Mummy I was good." He rayed his fingers through the dirt until his nails tore. Nothing but pebbles and old roots. He needed something sharper. Back at his truck, he grabbed the tire iron from behind the seat, dropped to his knees and pried at the earth like a grave robber. The first concrete block rolled away under his boot. Beneath it, wet soil, loose gravel and something else, metal. He clawed at it, fingers numb, a corner of rusty steel. He leaned back, wedged the tire iron under it, pried. A battered lockbox, maybe the size of a lunch pail, crusted in rust. No key, a cheap padlock snapped long ago. He forced it open with the tire iron's tip. Inside yellowed Polaroids, a roll of old tape, brittle and flaking, and under that a girl's hair tie, faded pink, a cheap plastic bead shaped like a star. Hannah's. He knew it the second he saw it. She'd worn it at her birthday. He remembered it pinching her hair while she blew out the candles Dale lit for her. He sat back on his haunches, breath hanging in the cold air. There was more. The tape, brittle but maybe salvageable, and the photos, blurry shadows of a child's face, a cramped corner with wood paneling, in the corner of one part of Alan's boot. He recognized the scuffed toe, the weird laces Alan used to brag about tying army tight. Ethan closed the box, clutched it to his chest like it might slip through his ribs if he let go. Alan lied. The bear wasn't nothing, the tape wasn't nothing, and this old dirt backyard wasn't nothing either. Back at the truck, he set the box on the seat next to the bear. He could feel them staring at him, her name stitched in faded pink, her small face ghosting in the Polaroid's Alan's boot in the corner, like a fingerprint left in wet cement. Ethan started the engine. If Alan thought he'd buried it all in this yard, he'd be up. Ethan wasn't 9 years old anymore. Ethan sat in the truck with the lockbox on the passenger seat, the bear propped beside it like a silent witness. The sky outside was that dull grey that says rain is coming, but hasn't made up its mind yet. The photos were spread across the dash, blurred shapes, a child's small shoulders, the edge of a dirty blanket. In one corner, Alan's boot, clear as day, same weird laces, same scuffed leather. He snapped a photo of each Polaroid with his phone, one by one, then tucked the originals back in the box. The hair tie he slipped into his jacket pocket, warm against his chest. For a second he thought about driving straight to the police station, slamming it on the counter, shoving the recorder in some detective's hand. But his gut twisted. They'd stalled his mother out for months back then. Said they'd searched, said they'd keep the file open, and when nobody turned up, they closed it with one polite phone call. Probably wandered, probably an accident. They'd file his bear under junk evidence, his tape under can't confirm, and Alan would slip his hands in his pockets, flash that rotten smile, swear the bear was some old keepsake, a grief trophy for his dead brother. He needed someone to burn it so hot the department couldn't bury it. He thought of one name, Ellie Mazur. Back then, she'd been the rookie detective who took his mother's statement on the porch, the one who slipped Ethan a juice box when the uniforms weren't looking. She'd lasted maybe a year before transferring out, probably sick of watching her bosses sweep nightmares under cheap carpet. Now she did insurance fraud day job at an office in town, wore neat suits and bad heels, but every so often her name popped up on local true crime shows when some family called her in to revisit the file. Ethan found her number online in under 5 minutes. 2 rings and her voicemail kicked in. "This is Detective Mazer, or just Ellie if you prefer." "Leave it." He hung up, dialed again. 3rd ring, still nothing. He checked the time, close to lunch. Maybe she'd be at that diner by the courthouse where every ex-cop in the county ate like they were still on the city payroll. He started the engine. Rain tapping soft on the windshield now. Polite cold, the bear's stitched paw brushed the gear shift when he shoved it into drive. He found her the second he stepped through the door. Back booth alone, half a club sandwich abandoned on a chipped plate. She had the same eyes, tired but sharp hair, darker now, a streak of grey pulled tight behind her ear. When she looked up and saw him standing there, something flickered across her face. Recognition, then caution. "Ethan Keller," she said, voice flat but not unkind. "I'll be damned." He slid into the booth across from her, the lockbox thumping onto the seat beside him. Ellie watched his eyes, not the box. "You still working roofs?" she asked, a half smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sometimes," Ethan said. He pushed the recorder across the table. "Got something else, though." She didn't touch it yet, just one brow lifted. "This about Hannah?" she asked, quiet. The name landed like a weight. Ethan nodded once. "Dale Whitmore died. I was clearing out his house for the landlord. Found her bear under his bed. Cut it open. This was inside." She reached over, then fingers brushing the recorder like it might bite her. "You play it yet?" she asked. He barked out a humorless laugh. "About a H100 times." She clicked it on. Hannah's tiny voice filled the empty air between their mugs and the ketchup bottle. "Please tell Mommy I was good." Then the slip. "Quiet now, little one." "No more, Mommy." Ellie's eyes flicked up, sharp, locked on him. "That Alan?" she asked. Ethan pushed the box toward her, flipped the lid. She saw the photos, the cheap hair tie. She lifted the Polaroid with the boot, turned it in the light. "I remember that kid's birthday," Ellie murmured. "You were there. The clown, the balloons, half the block came by. I remember the boots too." Her thumb brushed the edge of the photo. She didn't ask permission, just slid it into a plastic evidence sleeve from her purse. Old habit. "You know what this is, right?" she said, voice low. "It's enough to bury him," Ethan said, his knuckles widened on the table's edge. She shook her head. "It's enough to scare him, to make him desperate." Ethan leaned in, eyes locked on hers. "Good." Ellie held his stare. Then she sat back, exhaled slow. "All right, I'll pull the old file. I'll call a favor with a judge. If Alan so much as sneezes at a warrant, he'll know I'm on him." She glanced at the bear poking from his bag. "Don't let that thing out of your sight," she said. "It's your chain, your echo. You lose it, this dies again." Ethan felt something break loose in his chest. Not relief, not yet, but a piece of hope, sharp enough to cut through 16 years of rot. Outside, the rain turned steady. Alan probably thought he was safe, but that name stitched on cheap fur, and the tiny voice trapped on old tape said otherwise. Ethan hadn't planned on sleeping, but sometime after Ellie left the diner, he drifted off in the cab of his truck. Rain ticking on the roof, the bear tucked on the passenger seat like a silent guard dog. He woke to a knock on the window. For half a second he thought it was Ellie again. It wasn't. Alan Whitmore's pale face loomed through the rain-smeared glass grin, crooked, and eyes cold as January mud. Ethan jerked upright, fumbling for the recorder on the seat. Alan tapped the glass again. 2 slow, polite raps like he owned the damn lot. "Open up, boy," Alan called through the crack. "Ain't neighborly to sleep on the street." Ethan didn't move. He let the window stay closed. Engine off, door locked. He didn't trust himself not to swing first. Alan leaned down, breath fogging the glass. "I think we need to talk." Ethan cracked the window 2 in. Rain spattered in. Alan's voice slid through slick as oil. "You're making a lot of trouble," Alan said. "Ellie Mazer, she's still playing detective for the Lost Causes." "Cute." Ethan stared straight ahead, jaw tight. The bear sat on the seat between them. Hannah's name faded but clear under the smear of condensation. Alan's eyes flicked to it, then back to Ethan. "I told you, boy, walk away." Ethan's fingers drummed the wheel.
"You should have burned it all, Alan. You left pieces. That's your problem." Alan's grin twitched. Not all teeth now. There was something sour under it. A cornered animal flash in the eyes. "Listen to me," Alan hissed. "You think that woman is going to help you? She couldn't find her own ass back then. What's she going to do now? Parade your mama's tears on the news again?" Ethan felt the heat boil up his neck. "Say her name one more time." Alan ignored him. His voice dropped low, a whisper, only inches from the glass. "You think you're the hero, huh? You think you're going to find that sweet little girl under some old floorboards? You ever think maybe she didn't want to be found?" Ethan's grip on the wheel went white. Alan leaned closer, breath steaming. "You keep digging, boy. You're going to dig your mama into the grave right beside her." Ethan slammed the window shut so fast Alan flinched back, knuckles rapping the glass.
Alan's smile was gone now, just that flash of teeth like a mutt about to bite. He pointed one finger at Ethan through the rain, tapped it once, twice, 3 times on the glass. Then he turned and disappeared into the drizzle. No coat, just his flannel shirt sticking to his hunched shoulders. Ethan sat there a second, chest heaving. Then he slammed the gear into drive. He didn't drive home. He didn't call Ellie. Instead, he pointed the truck out of town. 2 exits past the diner, down a back road nobody used unless they were hunting or hiding. Alan's old property, the place Ethan knew about because when he was 10, Alan used to brag about the hunting shack where city people can't hear you scream. It wasn't a joke back then, it wasn't funny now. The turn-off was just a break in the trees, two muddy ruts winding through thicket that grabbed at the truck's doors like claws. He killed the lights, crept slow until the shack came into view. A sagging rectangle of plywood and rusted tin, half swallowed by the woods. The rain had stopped, but the hush it left behind felt worse, like the trees were holding their breath. He got out bare under his arm recorder in his pocket. He didn't have a gun, didn't have a plan, just a promise under his tongue. Please tell Mommy I was good. He stepped onto the crooked porch. The door hung off one hinge, dark inside mold and rot, breathing out at him. He clicked his phone light on. Thin beam cutting across old beer cans, a pile of tarps, a broken cot. He moved, slow boots creaking. The beam caught something in the far corner, a trapeur plywood sagging under a faded rug. He dropped to his knees, shoved the rug aside. Dirt smudged his palm. His heart thudded so hard he thought it might wake the whole forest. He pulled at the corner, the trapeur moaned, then popped free with a splintered crack. Below darkness a smell like wet earth and stale breath. He shone the light down. A dirt crawl space wood beams braced with rusty nails and something glinting half buried in the mud. A bracelet, cheap plastic beads spelling out Hannah. Ethan's breath caught. He reached in, fingers digging through wet grit. The beads were cold in his palm. He turned them over. Tiny letters, cheap toy store junk from the dollar bin back when Dale still pretended he was just a neighbor. A floorboard creaked behind him. Ethan froze. A whisper of cloth, then cold metal at the back of his neck. Alan's voice, soft, low mean. Should have left it alone, boy. Ethan didn't dare breathe. The metal pressed against the back of his neck was cold, the kind of coal that cuts straight through skin and sinks into your bones. Alan's breath tickled his ear. Stale and sour, thick with the bite of cheap whiskey. You think you're some kind of go-damn hero, Alan hissed, digging in dirt that's not yours stirring up. You don't understand. Ethan's fingers curled tighter around the bracelet in his palm. Hannah's cheap beads, the letters small enough to vanish if he squeezed too hard. The bear lay just inside the door where he dropped it. The stitched paw, barely visible in the weak phone light. The recorder was still in his pocket, its weight like a heartbeat. He couldn't quiet. Alan nudged the barrel harder into Ethan's skin. You got no idea how deep this goes, he rasped. You think Dale was some monster all by himself. You think I just came in to mop up his mess. That girl, your sweet Hannah, she was mine before he screwed it all up with his soft heart. Ethan's chest went tight. Rage flared so bright he thought he might vomit. Alan pressed closer, spit flecking Ethan's neck. You know how easy it is to keep something that small quiet. All it takes is the right words, the right fear. A basement and a locked door, that's all it takes. Ethan clenched his jaw so hard his teeth ached. His free hand inched toward his pocket. The recorder! Hannah's voice! Alan's whisper. Alan caught the motion, slammed the barrel of the gun into Ethan's shoulder. Pain flared white behind his eyes. Don't you move, boy! Alan growled. Don't you move. Somewhere deep in the crawl, space water dripped, a slow, steady tick that made Ethan's heartbeat feel like a drum in his throat. Alan leaned closer, voice dropping to a hiss. She's alive, you know. Ethan went still, his breath caught raw in his chest. Alan chuckled a sick, hollow rasp. Oh yeah, didn't think we'd keep her. Soft little thing like that. Quiet as a mouse when you promise a mommy's dead and the world outside will eat him alive. Ethan's mind reeled. Alive. Alive! The bracelet dug into his palm, Hannah's tiny letters cutting deep. Alan stepped back just half an inch like a cat, savoring the kill. "Where is she?" Ethan demanded. His voice was raw, the words scraping out like rust. Alan's grin glinted in the dark. "Close enough. She knows better than to run. She knows better than to scream." Little Hannah's got herself a new name now. New mind too broke her good. Ethan's hand found the recorder in his pocket. Thumb flicked the switch. A tiny click. The faint hiss of static. Alan didn't notice. Too busy leaning over eyes glittering mean. "You want her so bad?" Alan sneered. "You want to drag her back to that broken woman you call Mama. She won't even know you. She'll spit in your face when you try to pull her away." The words hit like a fist, but they didn't knock Ethan down. They fed him, gave him something solid to hate. He sucked in one sharp breath, then he slammed his head backward. The back of his skull cracked into Alan's nose with a sickening crunch. The gun clattered to the dirt. Alan let out a wet snarl, hands flying to his face. Ethan spun fists closed and drove his knuckles into Alan's gut. The man staggered back, knocking over the broken cot with a crash. Ethan dove for the pistol. Alan tackled him sideways. They hit the floorboards, dirt coughing up around them. Alan's hands scrabbled for Ethan's throat fingernails, splitting skin breath reeking hot and rancid. Ethan snarled through clenched teeth, felt the recorder shift in his pocket. Hannah's voice muffled but alive between them. "Please tell Mommy I was good." He roared, slammed his elbow into Alan's ribs, felt bone give, heard the old bastard wheeze. The bracelet slipped from his fingers, skittered across the dirt. Alan's eyes went wild, a flash of panic and rage and something else, a flicker of fear. "Where is she?" Ethan spat spit and blood on his tongue. "Where is she?" Alan's lips peeled back over broken teeth. "Close," he hissed. "So close you could kiss her goodnight." Ethan drove his fist into Alan's jaw, once, twice, until the man sagged limp on the dirt. He stumbled back, breath ragged, chest on fire. The crawl space yawned dark below him, that smell of damp earth and mold and something older. He dropped to his knees, crawled through the opening phone light, bouncing off warped beams and crumbling brick. At the far end, a door, small, rotted, held shut by a rusty latch. Ethan's hands shook as he lifted the bar. The hinges groaned, then gave. A tiny shape huddled on a bare mattress, thin arms hugging knees to her chest, tangled hair, pale skin, eyes wide but empty. Ethan's heart slammed into his ribs so hard he thought it might crack bone. He whispered her name. Hannah. But her eyes didn't change, didn't flicker. In the hush, the recorder in his pocket hissed, Hannah's old voice ghosting out, tinny and small. "Please tell Mommy I was good." The girl flinched. Her eyes darted to the bear in Ethan's other hand, threadbare paw stitched tight. She blinked, once, twice. Something like memory flickered behind those hollow eyes. Ethan dropped to his knees, held the bear out like a life raft. "Hey, kiddo," he rasped, voice raw. "It's me, it's Ethan. You know this, don't you? You know this bear." She didn't speak, but her fingers twitched toward the faded fur. Outside the shack, wind pushed through the trees. Rain ticked again on the tin roof. Inside, Ethan pressed the bear into her shaking hands. "Come on, Hannah," he whispered, his throat closing tight. "Let's go home." Hannah's fingers twitched around the bear's neck like she was afraid it might vanish if she blinked. Ethan stayed low on his knees, heartbeat drumming in his ears so loud it nearly drowned out the storm outside. She didn't speak, didn't flinch when thunder cracked, just stared at the bear's worn ear, the frayed threads of her name almost rubbed smooth by years of fear and small hands clinging tight. "It's real, Ethan," whispered voice. "You're real. I'm here now, Hannah." "You hear me?" Her mouth opened nothing but a ghost of breath. Her eyes flicked past him to the crawlspace door, then back down to the bear. The way a kid checks the closet for monsters, only to find out the monster lives in the hallway instead. He felt it then, that old guilt rising up like bile. 9 years old, a bowl of cereal cartoons droning in the background, the sound of the front door creaking open behind him. He pushed it down. He couldn't afford it now. A creak snapped his head around. Behind him, the shack's floorboard shifted. Slow, heavy footsteps above the crawl space boots dragging over rotted wood. Alan wasn't finished. Of course he wasn't. Ethan knew a man like that wouldn't stay down easy. He turned back to Hannah, her eyes still locked on the bear, the only anchor left in a mind Alan and Dale had spent 16 years grinding to dust. "Hey, look at me, kiddo." Her eyes twitched up, pale hollow. "But there. You remember this, right?" He tapped the bear's stitched paw. "Your birthday? Mum stitched your name. You held it so tight she had to pry it from you just to wash it." No sign she heard him, but her thumb brushed the thread. Back and forth, back and forth. Outside, a floorboard groaned again. Closer now. Ethan reached into his pocket, thumb brushing the recorder's cracked edge. Click. Static. Then her voice, the old ghost, trapped in plastic. "Please tell Mommy I was good." Hannah's breath caught a tiny sound, more instinct than memory, but her eyes flicked up. A spark, a crack in the wall Alan built. Ethan knelt closer. The recorder hissed again. Alan's old threat bleeding through. "Quiet now, little one." Hannah's shoulders jerked. Her free hand rose like she meant to cover her ears, but instead it hovered in the stale air, trembling above them. Boots thudded across the floor, closer to the trap-door. Ethan clicked the recorder off, grabbed her wrist, gentle but firm. "Hey, you with me? We're going now." She didn't fight, didn't nod either, just let him guide her up off the mattress. The bear clutched to her chest like a shield. He ducked them back through the crawl space, belly scraping dirt and splintered beams. Hannah's breath was shallow in the dark behind him. No crying, no panic, just that dead hush he hated worse than any scream. He pushed her up through the hatch first. Her knees wobbled. She stumbled into the shack's ruin of a room, mold old beer cans, dirt under her bare feet. Ethan hauled himself up after her just as Alan's shadow swung through the open doorway. Shotgun cradled in crooked hands, nose still crooked from where Ethan broke it. "Well, Alan," rasped, voice ruined, but steady. "Look at this. Family reunion." He stepped inside, muzzle aimed low, casual, like he'd done this before, like he'd stand there all night if he had to. "Get away from her," Ethan snarled. He pushed Hannah behind him, one arm out the recorder, jammed in his back pocket like a hidden blade. Alan snorted a laugh that made the walls feel smaller. "Why, so you can take her back to that sad old house, to that worthless woman you call a mother. She won't even know you, boy, won't know herself." Ethan shifted his stance. Hannah's breath ticked against his spine. He felt her hand clutch the back of his shirt, her fingers tight enough to dig through cotton and skin. Alan tilted the shotgun up, sighted Ethan's chest. You think she wants this? She's safe here. Mine. Not yours. Not your mama's. Mine." He stepped closer. The muzzle hovered over Hannah's shoulder. "You going to shoot me?" Ethan growled. "Do it, you sick old—" "Well, but she's coming with me." Alan's teeth showed behind cracked lips. "No, boy, she's not." He flicked the barrel up. Ethan lunged. The shotgun barked. Thunder inside rotten plywood. The blast punched the wall just past Ethan's shoulder, splinters spraying. Ethan slammed his shoulder into Alan's gut, drove him backward into the broken doorframe. Alan wheezed. The gun dropped.
It clattered across the floor, spinning under the broken cot. They went down together. Fists, elbows, old hate turned real. Alan's knuckles cracked across Ethan's temple. Ethan tasted blood, spat it back in Alan's face. Behind them, Hannah stood frozen. Bear clutched to her chest, eyes wide, the recorder half visible in Ethan's dropped jacket. Alan's fingers clawed for Ethan's throat, spittle spraying as he hissed, "She's mine!" Ethan slammed his forehead into Alan's nose. Again heard cartilage crack, felt Alan's grip weaken. Not anymore, Ethan snarled. He ripped Alan off, scrambled for the shotgun, but Hannah got there first. She dropped the bear, grabbed the recorder, pressed play. Hannah's ghost voice filled the shack. "Please tell Mommy I was good." Alan froze. His eyes flicked to her just for a second. That was enough. Ethan grabbed the shotgun, jammed the stock into Alan's jaw. The old man dropped like wet laundry, sprawling half-conscious across the rotten floor.
Hannah stood there, bare forgotten on the floor, recorder clutched to her chest like a life raft. Her lips moved no sound, but the word was clear. Ethan. He staggered up, chest-burning vision swimming. He reached for her, felt her cold fingers close around his wrist. "Come on, kiddo," he whispered. "Time to go home." They stumbled out of the shack just as the rain gave up its last drops, the sky cracking open to a thin, bruised dawn. Ethan's shoulder throbbed with every heartbeat, a deep bruise blooming where Alan's shotgun stock clipped him before the final scramble. Hannah's small hand stayed locked around his fingers, like she didn't trust the dark not to pull her back if she let go. She still hadn't said a word. Not really. Just that faint whisper of his name when the recorder's ghost voice cut through whatever Alan had planted in her head. But that was enough. They reached the truck. Ethan half shoved, half lifted her into the passenger seat. She clutched the recorder so tight her knuckles looked bloodless. The bear was back in her lap, threadbare ear against her chest like a heartbeat. He slammed the door, circled around, fired the engine to life. Headlights cut through the trees, hit the shack's rotted door, caught Alan's hunched silhouette dragging itself to the porch. He leaned on the frame, head down, spit trailing from a mouthful of broken teeth. Ethan stared at him for half a second through the drizzle on the windshield. Alan's eyes lifted dazed, still burning with something too old to ever come clean. Ethan didn't flip him off, didn't scream, didn't give him a final word. He let the engine answer instead. Tires spit mud and gravel. The old shack shrank in the rear view until it was nothing but dark brush and a question mark that would never close fully. 2 hours later, the county sheriff's office looked the same as it had 16 years ago. Same cracked steps, same window sign about respect our lawman. Only difference was the kid clutching the bear. This time wasn't 7. She was 23, knees drawn up in the back of the deputy's cruiser, staring at the pink thread on that bear's paw like it held her whole mind together. Ellie Mazer met them in the lot rain, dripping from the ends of her ponytail. One glance at Ethan's face told her enough. One glance at Hannah's wide eyes, the recorder clutched in her hands, told her more. "You did it," Ellie breathed, voice soft but unsteady. "Go damn Keller, you did it." Ethan's knees went weak for the first time all night. He pressed a palm to the hood to stay standing. "Get him," he rasped. "He's at that old shack on Birch Hollow, crawl space. He's still breathing." Ellie's nod was sharp, her voice already shifting to the cold iron tone he remembered from when she was just a uniform on his front porch. "I'll bury him, Ethan. You can count on that." They hustled Hannah inside. The recorder and the bear bagged like sacred evidence, but kept close enough for her to see. Ellie's voice coaxed, calm and gentle. Every other word a reminder that the nightmare wasn't a secret anymore. Ethan followed, shoulder-aching fists still raw from Alan's jaw. In a small interview room, Hannah perched on a metal chair, the bear balanced in her lap. A female deputy asked soft questions she didn't answer. Just a nod here, a blank stare there. Then Ellie pushed the door open, a clipboard tucked under one arm. She nodded at Ethan. "You good to sit with her?" He dropped into the chair beside Hannah. The metal groaned under his weight. Ellie set the recorder on the table, pushed it toward Hannah's fidgeting fingers. "You know who that is?" Ellie asked gently. Hannah blinked. The bear's ear brushed her chin as she nodded. Her mouth opened soundless at first, then a scratch of a word. "Me." Ethan swallowed hard. "That's right. You were always good, hon. You hear me? You were always good." Her eyes flicked to him, 2 clear seconds where she was there. The same small spark that once asked him to tie her shoelaces before kindergarten. Then her gaze dropped back to the bear, but the hook was there now, the wall Alan built, cracking around it. Ellie squeezed Ethan's shoulder. Her touch was solid, the first thing that hadn't felt hollow in hours. "You'll need to say it again and again," she told him, voice pitched low. "It'll take time. I got time," Ethan rasped. Ellie left the room. Outside the hallway buzzed with radio chatter confirmation they'd found Alan, where Ethan left him alive enough to be dragged in, cuffed and booked under charges that would bury him deeper than the crawl space ever did. A uniform slipped in, offered Ethan water he didn't touch. Hannah didn't look at the deputy, just the bare thumb, brushing the name stitched there like a prayer. An hour passed before a knock broke the hush. The door cracked open. Ethan's mother stepped in hair-unbrushed coat over a nightgown. She probably grabbed in blind panic when Ellie's call came through. She froze in the doorway. Hannah looked up, eyes dull but seeing. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then Hannah whispered soft and raw as wind through dead leaves, the same word she'd once said through stuffing and cheap fur. "Mommy." The sound broke something inside Ethan that felt good to break. He didn't wipe his tears this time. He just rested his palm on Hannah's shoulder and felt her lean into it, an inch closer, an inch back from the dark. Outside the interview room, a deputy logged the recorder into evidence. The bear stayed with Hannah. It always would. One name stitched in cheap pink thread, the same thread that pulled her home.